Tonight at the Chazaq Network we have a very special guest with us, a very good friend of mine, Rabbi Label Lam. Rabbi Label Lam is a renowned author who writes on a weekly basis on the Parsha to thousands of subscribers. He's a renowned lecturer speaking around the country for various different organizations. Rabbi Label Lam is also the principal of a local yeshiva over here, of Yeshiva Shaarei Tzion, and Rabbi Lam wears a very many different hats. And my first of all, welcome, Rabbi Lam. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
We appreciate that very much. And Rabbi Lam wears many different hats, but I want you to understand that he didn't always look like this. He didn't actually wear a hat before it, but actually a football hat, if I'm not mistaken.
A baseball
hat. A baseball hat. Okay,
hat,
fine.
right.
So Rabbi Lam, why don't we start off with that? How it all started? What happened exactly?
I don't know how far we have to go back, but I was born in Queens.
Oh, really?
I
didn't know that.
Whitestone. My father told me he built the Whitestone Bridge, and we believed him for a while. Then my family moved up to Westchester County when I was about 2 years old, and I don't think they had any. There was a family business that opened up over there, a diner. I don't think they had any ideas about where we would go for Jewish education. So my brothers and I, we went to public school.
Interesting.
And bar mitzvahs was everything was a Hebrew school. That meant Mondays and Wednesdays and Sundays, or Tuesdays and Thursdays and Sundays, all in preparation for the bar mitzvahs. And then the bar mitzvah was basically the end of the Jewish education for everybody.
It was, like many, unfortunately, it was more bar than mitzvah.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of pressure. I remember we had to. It was a crash course the last few months for learning the Haftorah. And I was always wondering, when do we get the other half of the Torah? It was like I didn't know what we were doing. But all I knew was my two older brothers went before me, and they got a pocket full of checks as a result of the bar mitzvah. And and then basically we said goodbye. All I remember from Hebrew school was that we used to try to get kicked out of Hebrew school. There was a candy store across the street, and we used to try to annoy the Israeli teachers, and they would shout at us, "Sheket b'vakasha," So that was, that was all we were left with a little knowledge of the Hebrew aleph base. That was it.
So that's up to 13, and then
up to 13. Then I was in public school. In public school, we were involved with all the, the public school stuff. We were an all-American kid. We were in choir. I was in choir, and I was doing I was in drama, believe it or not.
Really?
And I was also into sports. I was captain of the high school football team. I was captain of the high school basketball team, and I was captain of the high school baseball team.
Oh, so you've been baseball, basketball, everything.
I played everything, and we had some good teams. I'm told I still have some of the long-standing pitching records that go back maybe even 40 years. So.
I remember we actually had a small match when I was in the Yeshiva Shaarei Tzion.
That was basketball,
and
there's a slight age difference between us, so so I had that advantage over you.
I think you shared 3-0. What was it?
Let's not go there.
Anyways, Rabbi Lam, so college, right? You were in you mentioned that you were in the.
So I actually had a full scholarship to Colgate University. And I did my 4 years over there. And you do years. In Jewish life, you do days.
Right. So how, tell us. I'm saying from a kid that went to public school, family wasn't so
right.
religious, and
so I thought that when I would get to university that I would discover the answer to the questions about what life was all about, and. To the contrary, in university life, I saw that people were busy disassembling, and they were. I'm trying to be delicate over here. I don't know who might be listening on the other side, but they weren't learning the beer halacha.
Right.
They were learning the halacha of beer. And there was a lot of stuff going on that I'm not sure if the parents knew. That was what was going on, and how much they were paying, that they would approve of it. It was pretty, it was pretty gruesome, and that was common. That was common for the professors. It was common for the teachers, for the students. It was common for everybody, And the truth is, it was a big turnoff for me, because I was
You're
expecting.
looking for more.
I came from a home, even though we weren't religious, but we were interested in intellectual ideas. We were interested in idealism. We used to have like discussions in our house. People would talk about things, and we knew how to make fun of things also. And that was one thing that I discovered, in college and later on afterwards also, is that I was good at making fun of things. I was good at, it was like a Saturday Night Live, like reducing things, but just breaking things into little pieces and litzanos. But when it came to taking an affirmative stance in life, I realized that, if people are following me, and I felt like I had certain leadership qualities because people were like taking my lead and following me, I didn't know where I was leading anybody. And that troubled me. So you had people lining up behind me, and all we knew how to do was destroy things. And
make fun of things.
And make fun of things, but not to build anything. So if you never built anything, you really don't have much of a license to make fun of stuff. The world has enough critics.
So it was bothering you inside?
It bothered me inside. I used to actually hitchhike around at that time.
How old were you?
I was 21, 22. Mm-hmm. And I used to graduate from college even. By the time I handed in my last philosophy and religion paper in college, I knew what it meant to get a good grade in college, in school, but I didn't know what it meant to get a good grade in life. And I knew what it meant to hit a home run in baseball, but I didn't know what it meant to hit a home run in life. And I saw all my friends going on what I called at that time in my life the fast track to nowhere.
Wow.
That, they were all going out to corporations to get jobs, or they were going out to medical school, law school. I was happy that they saw that this is what they want to do, but I saw like this long, like a long avenue, a Skinnerian box, that they were going down some long avenue, and now they're committing themselves for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years to dig a deeper debt to have to pay back in order to accomplish what? And I ran to the end of the movie, and I thought to myself, if I'm going to be successful at the American dream, like I was successful at everything else, I'm going to retire from working for IBM for the next 50 years. They're going to give me a gold watch. I'm going to be sitting in the suburbs in the northern Westchester in my backyard with my gold watch, tanning myself, and with 1.7 kids and a dog and and at that time a station wagon in the driveway. And I ran to the end of the movie, and I saw myself looking up at a blue sky with one puffy white cloud, and a bird passes by, and he disappears to the horizon. And I sit up from my chair, and I take one last gasp as I gaze at the world, and I say, what was I supposed to do with my life anyway? And then I fade into oblivion myself, never having answered, like, what am I doing here? What is this all about? Why am I here?
That's an amazing thing, a 20-something year old to start thinking that way.
I was thinking, because the truth is, life is these binary choices. So, as long as there's still minor choices you can make, but there's certain times you reach that they're just like a giant parting of the roads. Like, the next step I'm going to make might commit me to a 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 year, and then I really have to find out before I take that big step, what am I doing with my life? So I put on the yellow blinkers and I let everybody run by, and I did a lot of little different jobs. And one of the things I used to do was I was taking classes in Boston at a Harvard Extension School, and I was reading books, and I was a mover. I was, I used to move pianos. I worked with a bunch of fellows who were doctoral candidates. We used to discuss things as we were in the truck together. They were all these high-minded guys, jocular, athletic fellows. And we used to look into people's lives and analyze the people who were moving. There were all kinds of different reasons why people were moving. Marriages, divorce, all kinds of different things. And we were thinking and analyzing. And I was hitchhiking different places. And at some point, like I mentioned before, I was thinking to myself, I'm watching everybody else's life, and I'm looking at the people's life like they're under my microscope, and I'm hitchhiking through other cultures, and I hitchhiked through Europe and across the country.
Oh, you traveled?
I traveled,
Wow.
I'm not recommending it. Don't you kids at home try that. And at some point, I thought to myself, if somebody would hitchhike past my life, they would only see me hitchhiking past their life.
Right. So what was the first move? You're going here.
So at some point, an alarm bell went off in my mind, and again, I don't really have a source of where it came from, and a thought entered into my mind that sort of woke up on its own, not something, a quote from a book or anything, that said, make a difference in somebody else's life. Yeah, and so I said, wow, that's make a difference in somebody else's life. So at that same time, another bell rang. I got a phone call from a friend of mine who had graduated a year ahead in university, a black-skinned Puerto Rican fellow named Louis Matos.
Louis Matos. Okay.
And I used to hang out in college with the inner city kids because I felt that they had a certain ethnicity to them. They had a certain, you could slap five, you could have a good laugh with them. They, for some reason the Courtneys and the Chips, like the little, or whatever it was. Like, I had a hard time relating to them. They had, they were just like.
You didn't connect.
Yeah, it was like I don't know. That wasn't my poetry. That wasn't my flavor. But the inner city kids, they had like a certain life to them that I enjoyed, and so I had a bunch of friends in that department. I had never gone to school with them in high school. So in college, it was a new experience. And so the friend said, you have a way with people, come join us. And we have a school for high school dropouts, Puerto Rican kids who need to get some job experience. And so we were giving them some job experience and helping them get their GED. So that became my first real resume job. And when I went to go visit these kids, I remember that I interviewed a whole bunch of them. We sat and we talked, and I found out about what the particulars and the challenges in their life are about. And at the end of the day, I sat back and I said to myself, I feel like that guy with the bumper sticker on the back of his car that says, "Don't follow me, I'm lost myself." Here I am trying to help people and make a difference in somebody else's life.
And
but,
you yourself.
And I myself don't have an anchor. I don't have a place from which I'm gonna go into the water to save people. And I didn't really take a swimming class yet, so I don't know how to swim myself. And I'm saving people, so I felt a little bit ill-prepared for this.
Not in the right place. You didn't feel.
So I was looking around where I have to anchor myself someplace in order to be able to help other people.
I see you were thinking a lot, right?
That was always my problem. I was told it was my problem, but I realized that it was important to me.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Very good, very good. Okay, fine. From there, then.
So one of the things that we used to do was to bring in speakers and different guest people to inspire the students. And one time, I asked this very, very nice, handsome, chisel-jawed black fellow, this who had a nursing center where we had students who were interning there. And I asked him, I said, maybe you'll come speak to the students at our school. And he said, he doesn't want to come to the school. And I was a little bit taken aback. I said, you have something to offer. They can gain from you. You've gained some success. And tell them how you got to where you... He said, no. He said, I want to speak to the students, but not at the school. I said, where then? He said, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I had once been a curator there, he said. So I said, fine. Okay. So, OPM, other people's money, it's government money. So we got 2 buses on a Tuesday morning, I think it was. And we took 80 students down to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And he showed us black art and Indian art and Spanish art and, showed us around. Art. And then he sat down on the floor, and he sat us down on the floor, on the marble floor of the hallowed halls of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And he had like a little, one of those, like a lectern, like a conductor's lectern in front of him. And he started going into his little speech, his drusha, And he says, in order to know where you're going to in life, you got to know where you're coming from. He says, the reason why I brought you over here, he says, because inside the Puerto Rican personality, he says, there's black, Indian, and Spanish streams and cultures. He says, and I know that sometimes somebody doesn't like the other part. The Indian doesn't like the Spaniard, and the Spaniard doesn't like the black man, and the black man rejects the white and the Indian, and all these different parts are all warring with each other. So if you want to make peace with the world, he says, make peace with yourself. And I'm thinking to myself, the guy's saying nice Jungian psychology, maybe it is. It's archetypal type of thinking, very nice. I knew where to categorize it. And I'm nodding my head and sort of agreeing, and he's saying, in order to know where you're going to in life, you got to know where you're coming from. I'm saying, I'm really digging what the guy is saying. And then he turns to me, even though the speech was for the students, and he says, Bobby over here, that was my English name, don't tell anybody, okay?
Okay, that's good, exclusive.
It sounds close to Rabbi, Robbie. Bob over here, he knows where he comes from. And I'm sort of like, now they look at me, he says, he's a son of Abraham, he says to me, right? And I was like stunned. I said, Abraham was not my bar mitzvah portion, and neither was my brother, so I don't remember having heard too much about it. And my first reaction was anti-Semitism, if he said like Jew boy or something like that. But I realized he didn't say anything inappropriate, he didn't say anything pejorative, anything negative. So I was like a little bit taken aback. And then after that, my mind was working 1,000 miles an hour. I have 80 students, 159 eyes staring at me, I better come up with the right answer and very quickly, or else it's going to be a big embarrassment. So I was thinking, and in a split second, my mind flashed back to a project we did in Hebrew school. When I was we took a cloth and we took the edges off and we made it into a challah cover underneath underneath the synagogue in the Hebrew school downstairs. And that same day, we opened up a book called The Heroes of Jewish History. This big, thick, brown book with almost cloth-like wooden pages. And in the third chapter, there was a title page that talked about a man named Abraham and a woman named Sarai coming from a place called U-R. I remember we chuckled, and I think I might have even started like a little thing like and I got tossed out of class because of it. We never, check out the fucking shit. But it stuck in my brain that there was a picture of a on a top, there was a third of the page of a man named, Abraham and a woman named Sarai, and they were wearing like white robes like Lawrence of Arabia, schlepping a bunch of camels behind them, and they were starting out on their journey. And I said, yeah, and so I have all these students looking at me, son of Abraham, right? 2, 3, and I said, yeah, that's right. And my mind flashed back to that point over there, and I agreed to it, and I went rushing back to my family's house after work that day, and I started, scavenging through the shelves and looking for. We had thousands of books that my brothers and I all brought home from university, and thousands from before we went to university. And I said, there they are. There's these 3 black Masoretic texts, these 3 Bibles that we had gotten upon the graduation from Hebrew school, 3 English Bibles. Since I was the youngest one amongst my brothers, and I was the only and these were the only books that had never been opened. I could tell from the gentle geologic slope of dust on top which one was mine, and I took it out, and there was my name on the inside flap on the cover, and I started flipping through to see where I can find something about Abraham. And I see, here's this man and this woman starting out at the age of 75, barren, childless, least likely, voted in their high school class, least likely to make it into the 20th century. And here we are, and here I am, looking back at them and reflecting back and saying, wow, that's amazing. And then I said, that's my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. And then I turn a couple of pages later and I see him, this man, Abraham, doing extreme acts of kindliness. And I remember stories I heard about my great-grandfather, who I knew, who settled in Newburyport, Massachusetts, who built a synagogue and used to help people and feed people and house people. And I said, it's chesed. And I said, that sounds like, that's a thread, that's a theme, in our family. I feel like I'm meeting my great-grandfather, relate to him. And I wish I knew more. It's like I'm dusting off some old pages of a family album, and I, wishing I could, look into their eyes and talk to them and find out a little bit more about them. It was an entree. It was a waking up, an appetizer for me. Like I want to know more, and I walked around for months and months, sort of obsessing on this idea. I know who my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was, going back 3,700 years. And I went back to the library. Back then, I couldn't Google, didn't have, to go back to the index cards in the library, the Dewey Decimal System. And I did research, and I find out that the Chinese people, they have an old culture, but that they relate to any individual, that they say, this is my great father, this is my great grandfather. Do they say, the Ming Dynasty, am I related to King Ming? I'm looking in the subways in New York and wondering if these people, no Indian, no Chinese, any of the ancient cultures, they don't know who they're related to. I said, but I have credible information, and I know who my great-great-great, and I started feeling like, am I the only one that's aware of this concept over here? I'm the only living boy in New York. And then at some point, what happened was a major revolution happened in my brain, and that is, I realized at some point, I'm looking at it all backwards. Because here I am saying, I know who my great-great-great-great-grandfather is, if I'm the center of the universe. Right. And maybe on some level we are, and I am. But it's a sort of an ethnocentric, egocentric perspective, and I'm looking back down the highway of history and saying, that's who my great-great-great-grandfather was, going back 3,700 years. And at one point I flipped it around and I said to myself, I'm looking at it all wrong, fool what I am. And I asked a question, and the question that I asked myself goes like this. How did Abraham and Sarah, how did they make their impact felt 3,700 years into the future? Because here I am, their grandchild, thinking about them. And I was wondering, the local question that really gnawed at me was, what type of parent or grandparent would I have to be that my children or my grandchildren should ever care who I was or what I lived for? And the dirty little secret that I carried inside was, who wanted to have children anyway?
Right.
Because I grew up in a world where I looked, everything I knew from the news, from the filthy filter of what's going on in the news, and the way we came to understand the world was, it's a dangerous place, there's bombs around, and it's a dirty place because it's polluted, and why would I bring somebody into somebody else's dirty kitchen over here? Why, what's the kindliness in that? But probably the real reason is that, again, I'm already lost myself, don't follow me. What songs would I teach a child? Why would I wake up a soul, bring it into this world, and then take it and lead it where? It didn't seem to be. So I was struggling with that inside. Why would I want to have a child? Why would I want to do that? I didn't know what songs I would teach them.
Were you even married yet?
No.
Were you thinking about that?
Yeah,
Interesting.
I'm saying Chocham Roisa Nolad. These things are all the future.
Looking at the future.
Looking and feeling that feeling my way into the future. Again, as an all-American boy growing up, with almost zero guidance in Yiddishkeit and Torah and mitzvahs, zero. So my only tradition was, I had no tradition. So I have to figure out everything myself. So I had this question, this real heavy question. So the only place I'm going to look is, the only place I could ask, the only place I could look is inside myself. So Shlomo Melech actually says, Maya mamukim eitza b'leiv ish, v'ish tevuna yedalena. There's deep counsel of water inside everybody, and we got to mine it out. We got to find out how to get to it. So I would write. And even to this very day, I carry around, little notebooks, and I write in it. This is, Kanei l'chachaver. I come up with an idea, pops into my brain, a question, and I write it down. Write it down. Or I got a highlighter also. Here's my other good friend over here. These are my friends. Yep. And so I wrote it down. So so I was writing. I said, let me write a journal, or we called it at that time they called it a diary. Yeah. But it wasn't like Dear Diary, she called, or I found this on sale, so I bought two. It wasn't like that. This was more like I write a question on the top of a page, like, after all this learning in university and everything, what do you know? What lasts? And I would start with a serious question, and I would just like free fall. I would write down to the bottom of the page. By the time I got down to the bottom of the page, I always found that there was a certain pounding word on the bottom of every page that surprised me. I didn't know where it came from, and the word was one. One. I couldn't escape this word one. And I didn't know where it came from. The word narrowed down to that, almost like a little point, a little like a tack, one. And I'm wondering, where did that come from? And I realized, as a young Jewish boy growing up, every night before I go to sleep, I put my hand over my eyes, and I would say math, English, social studies, science, because those are the subjects that I had paper doing this, and I have now a test on that. And I thought that life was neatly divided up into those subjects. And when I got to university, it was the science of the history. They do the interdisciplinary weave. Ooh, the history of the science of math and the math of the art of history of architecture. Ooh. So now you're doing all these combinations. But I remember I had once highlighted inside a book, a philosophy book, where a French philosopher had said, all science is one. All science is one, which means that in truth, it's really one reality, right. And there's different chokhmas, there's different, but it's all one crystallized reality, and somehow there was something one about the world, and I used to do copying and pasting, not the copy pasting we do these days. Right? Which means I used to circle in my little book on my tall legal pad, and I would write some other things into another like keep pad that I would hold on to. Because every once in a while something profound would pop out, and I didn't even where did that come from? And so in that little pad, I remember I think I found in a phrase or two what could be the beginning of the answer to the question that I raised then, that still haunts me and still drives me to this very day, that question about Avram and Sarah making their influence felt 3,700 years into the future. And the two little lines that I wrote for myself at that time go like this. And imagine that you go out to the country someplace and you see a lake, a pond, and you throw in a rock, and the rock hits the water, and it sets out these little, concentric circles, these ripples. And then after a while, the rock settles down, and the lake goes back to being like a clean piece of ice. So I wrote down for myself like this: pebbles and ponds are our ponderings, but boulders and oceans were our father's notions, whose waves still rock the sea, whose waves still rock the sea. Again, pebbles and ponds are our ponderings, but boulders and oceans were our father's notions, whose waves still rock the sea, whose waves still rock the sea. And I imagine that there was a boulder that hit the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, 3,700 years ago. We don't know the velocity, we don't know the density, we don't know the mass of this rock, but all I can tell you is that it's still shaking and rocking in the world today in a big world, in a big way, and that there's something about the quality, not of Avraham Avinu's political might or his military might or his political connection, but more to do with a certain idea. And I wanted to know, what was that idea? You know, my idea is that pebbles and ponds are our ponderings. You know, we're thinking about small stuff. We're busy with insignificant stuff, with trivia.
And then at the end, they're just
and it makes a little ripple and it disappears. But boulders and oceans were our father's notions. What was that notion? What was that idea? So that idea brought me into well, it was in Manhattan. I had taken up an apartment in Manhattan. Temporarily moved out of Westchester County, and I started going to the Garment Center Synagogue, which is Garment Center Synagogue on 37th Street, whatever. It was a little transient population. They had a group of 14, 15 elderly people. Everybody was over the age of 86. People asked me who goes there. I said the average age is deceased. I was the only young fella there, and I never knew what page we were on. I stood when they stood. I sat when they sat. And they used to call me for some mystical reason. The only thing I felt comfortable doing and I was really equipped for was Hagba. Yeah. We're talking about an Ashkenazi Hagba. It's like professional weightlifting, And all the men would gather around and they would touch my back and feel my muscles, and they would look at each other like, Louis, look. A young one, we had a young one. They looked at me the way my grandmother, Leah Shalom, used to look at me. He says, like, you're the future. They're looking at me. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm the future, we're in big trouble. Because I don't know anything. I know zero, less than zero. I don't even know what page we're on. I would look at the Hebrew letters and sort of remember them, and I would look at the English side, and the English side of the page over there was before Art Scroll. It was the Hertz Chumash, whatever. And even in the Birnbaum Siddur, before the Art Scroll Siddur, and the words were tickling my mind, and I said, wow. I look on the Hebrew side, and like Moshe looking into the Promised Land, I said, I wish I could figure out what was inside those black squiggly lines. If I can penetrate into some of them black squiggly lines, that's where the gold is. In translation, there's something lost in translation. If you're getting so much out of out of looking in the English. Right. So what am I going to find in the original over there? And I did have a basic familiarity with the original because I had gone through bar mitzvah lessons. Right. So it was there. It wasn't totally foreign. It wasn't total Chinese and Greek to me. So I had this desire to penetrate and to find out what's inside them black squiggly lines.
Right. So you had
I went to the rabbi of that synagogue, and
he was
I
also
told him.
86.
No, he was a younger fella.
He was a younger fella.
And I told him I had gone to Israel on one time on a 6-month when I was a freshman in university. I actually went to Israel and I worked on a kibbutz. Oh, right. And I had very little contact with Judaism, very little contact. But I remember one time in Yerushalayim, a Gentile friend of mine, we ditched our backpacks and we went to, it must have been a Hasidic Tish, because we saw these, the only time I had ever seen these guys with the long beards and the hats, besides in a Woody Allen movie when he was feeling really guilty about something, suddenly these images would wake up in his mind. And and I saw those guys over there. We danced around in a circle like the revolving door, then out the revolving door. Right. And I said to the rabbi, I said, I'm going to go back over there. I'll hitchhike. I'll try to get there somehow, by hook or by crook. And they'll show me what's inside the squiggly lines. They can teach me.
The rabbi told you this, or you?
I told the rabbi that I have a plan. I got to find out what's inside those squiggly lines. He said, no. He set me up for a Shabbaton in Brooklyn. So I ended up going to a Shabbos, my first Shabbos in Brooklyn. And when I went there, this rabbi put the tefillin on my arm for the first time. He'd taken my blood pressure. I don't know what he's doing. Yeah.
That's hilarious. I've never heard of those stories. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So I went there with the first Shabbos, and I put on tefillin.
I hope you didn't put on tefillin on Shabbos.
No, Erev Shabbos, and they set me up by family. I sat by family, and it was so everybody sitting around the table, Inky, Dinky, Louie, and Dewey, everybody sitting around together.
And it wasn't Thanksgiving.
And it wasn't Thanksgiving, and it wasn't the Pesach Seder, and they weren't fighting over who's going to change what channel. They had the candle on it. That was all around the hearth of the candelabra. I don't remember anything anybody said at that Shabbos table. But just seeing a whole family and a whole family together
Inspired you, right?
It took my breath away. And then we got together with all these, it must have been 40 or 50 other young people came for that Shabbaton. And
you remember whose house it was, or you would have?
I remember. As a matter of fact, I bumped into him, and I.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Family Hildesheim. I know people who know them. You know, he had been.
Hildesheim family. Okay. Wow. What a big schus they have.
and then we went to someone's house to hear a speech, and Matthias Friedman.
Oh.
Spoke, and I remember I took the big cushy chair in the middle of the living room for myself, you know. And he said, I remember I don't know if it was, maybe it was the Shabbos atmosphere. I met 40, 50 other young people like myself over there. And I said, like, why did you guys come? And I was talking with them, and they had all made the same arduous climb intuitively, and also using other types of tools of logic, trying to find that it all came to the same conclusion. It all came to the same, I felt like a mountain climber came to a mountaintop, a plateau, and everybody came up and made the same climb, came to the same conclusion at the same time that I did. I was amazed.
Yeah, you felt good.
And then there's a whole bunch of people living there, you know, and I said, what are you people doing here? I said, oh, we live here all the time. What's it like down there in the valley? No. This is where it's at. You know, we were all trying to get over here. We're trying to get to this point over here.
Bar Park or Flatbush?
This is in Crown Heights.
Crown Heights,
Yeah.
Oh, Brooklyn.
So the rabbi said, he said, you Western intellects, you thinkers. And I'm sitting there, that's right, you know, you got that right, you know. So he says, you think God is in your little world. He says, but you live in God's world. And suddenly in that moment over there, my whole life turned inside out and upside down. And I realized the fool what I am, I'm walking around my whole life waiting for the Almighty to prove himself to me. Do me an Irish jig. Show me that you exist. Come on, split a C. I haven't seen anything lately. You know, if you want me to believe in you, then do something. And, you know, like my kids now, they say, you know, you treat me nice, or else I won't inherit your money. You know? Do me a favor, would you please? You know, thank you so much. So here we are. So it's a chutzpah, like it's a very arrogant posture, and I realized that time is not on my side, not like the song says, and I better prove to the Almighty that I exist. So I walked away with the yarmulke on my head after that Shabbos. I'm walking around now with a yarmulke on my head, saying, I live in God's world.
Beautiful.
You know, and I came home to my family's house. They were having a barbecue. I think it was Memorial Day weekend or something.
They probably thought you lost it.
You know, and there was a whole bunch of people over there. They're having a barbecue. Roz and Mac. They were all named Roz and Mac. All my mother's friends from Long Island. And they're looking at me like, well, you know, like, what's today? A Jewish holiday? Who are you? Pope? You know. And they were all Jackie Mason, whatever. They're all peppering me. And I said, no. This means I live in God's world. And they said, you know, let's go out to the Mercedes and let's get out of here. You know, Roz. You know, they were all ready to heavens to Murgatroyd, like this stage. They're ready to get out of there. Like this guy's out of his. So I got shepherded into my room and said, we'll give you a burger and just stay out of the way and don't, you know. And don't bother us, and we won't bother you.
You do your thing with it.
So Monday morning, I'm back with my journal, and I'm writing, and I'm thinking, and I got a new book, and I think I maybe got some tzitzis too, or something like that. And I'm trying to figure out, like, I go to work now. I'm going back to work with my Puerto Rican kids and everything. I said, do I put this beanie on my head, or don't I put this beanie on my head? So I'm sitting there writing and thinking, and I said, you know something? I decided on my own that I'll keep it on till I get to work, and then I'll take it off, and then I'll put it in the glove compartment of the car, and I'll put it back on. I must have gotten carried away with the writing, because I looked at the clock. I'm late. Oh, I told them never to be late. Now I'm late, and the traffic gets thicker. So I'm rushing now to work, and I couldn't find a place. I'm going around doing hakafas trying to find the parking place. I find the parking place, and I forgot to take the yarmulke off my head. So I come in front of the class. I say, come on, everybody, let's sit down. Let's begin. I'm sorry I'm late. I told everybody not to be late. Now I'm late. And they all jump into their seats. And one kid says from the back, what's that thing for, man? Protection, you know? And they all had a big yucky laugh, you know, at me. And I looked, I said, oh no, I left it on top of my head. I forgot to take it off. If I would have taken it off on my own in the car, that would have been okay. But to be forced off with a laugh, I felt that was disingenuous now to whisk it into my pocket. So I kept it on my head. I composed myself. And I put myself back into the same state of mind I was on Shabbos when the rabbi spoke. And I said, this is to remind me that I live in God's world. I said with perfect equanimity and confidence. The place was silent, like nobody knew what to do with such a statement like that. And I remember the pause was so pregnant, you know, we're expecting quadruplets over there, you know, that till this little olive-skinned girl, Macy, sitting in the third row. I remember exactly what she looks like and where she was sitting. She said, "Word, man, word, word."
Yeah.
You know, which at that time was like, you know, like she gave the stamp, like
Power.
that it's real and he means it. You know, and I realized after that, like I don't have to apologize to anybody. I wear a yarmulke on my head. I'm a son of Abraham. I live in God's world. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And until that point, I felt in my life like always like one of these Picasso pictures, like splintered into 1,000 pieces. You see, like Cubist art, like you got an eye over here, and you're trying to be everything to everybody, but you're nothing to yourself. And all of a sudden, with the yarmulke on my head, I felt like I got my core. All those pieces are starting to heal, and I'm becoming one person.
The puzzles coming together.
Courage, but I also realized I represent more than I know. Also, that started to become clear to me. That became the next challenge. I go out to a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, on a Friday night with some Gentile friends of mine, and you know, and I had no idea, you know, what I'm supposed to be doing. And some guy looks out from behind the menu this Friday night, and he says to me, like, I don't know where this guy came from, at Essential Casting. He says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "This is not a kosher restaurant, and it's Shabbos." He says like that, you know. And so I told my friend, "Let's get out." And so we said, "We didn't order." I said, "Come on, we gotta go, we gotta go." And we left, and I realized I forgot to ask this guy, "What are you doing over here?" You know? But Harbi Shluchim L'Makom, Kodesh Baruch Hu puts Eliyahu Navi in all kinds of different little situations in our lives. That he reminded me. So
That is hilarious.
So I got to find out, you know, what I'm representing now.
Right.
You know,
wearing this thing, you gotta.
This part of the slinky now got ahead. You got too far ahead.
Oh yeah.
So now I got to catch up the back of me that says, you know. So I started looking around. Where can I find the people who are going to learn the squiggly lines?
Right.
I was interested in learning the squiggly lines. And there's an old Zen notion, and I can show you exactly where it is in the Chumash too. It says when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Oh yeah.
And I had suddenly relatives from the West, from way out in Seattle, Washington, appeared that they had gone to high school in Denver. There was a young lady that was about to get engaged, and she was living in Borough Park, and she had her brother learning in Lakewood, my cousin Eliyahu. And they were looking for relatives in the East to invite to the wedding when she would get engaged over here in the New York metropolitan
Lo and
area.
behold.
And they called up my cousin. They found in the phone book the name of my aunt, and my aunt came over to me at a family party on July 4th that year and said, "Here, you know, you're wearing a yarmulke, you're a nut," you know. And I heard this girl's a religious girl. She's also a nut, you know. And so here, why don't you get in touch? I said, okay. So I made the phone call. And I went there to join her for Shabbos, and she got engaged, and another brother came, and I got to meet some other people. And I said, "These are my cousins, and they're religious. They became religious. They were religious, and they didn't lose it so much, you know, like our family." I said, "Wow," you know. And they said, "You know, come." When my cousin was walking around in back of me, my cousin Eliyahu, he was whispering to me, "Why don't you go to Ohr Somayach? Why don't you go to Ohr Somayach?" But he didn't say anything directly to me. He was walking around behind me, like dropping post-hypnotic suggestions in my mind. He said, "Why don't you go to Ohr Somayach?" Like a fly was buzzing behind me. I kept on turning around like, "You talking to me? Like, what's that? What do you know?" It was weird. He's a very quiet guy, very quiet. They called him when he left Lakewood.
He was also Lam?
No. He's a Tadel. When he left Yeshiva in Lakewood, so the Rosh Yeshiva, they praised him as the Baal Shtika, the master of silence, because you can't get him, you know, onto. He has one finger on the Gemara, one finger on Rashi, and you can't get him to talk about anything other than what's going on over here. He's focused like a laser beam. But he's walking around, he's dropping, "Why don't you go to Somayach? Why don't you go to Somayach?" And I said, "Or what? What's the other option?" I don't know what he's talking about. Or, you know, who starts anything with or, you know?
Or what?
In the beginning, you know, what was the option before or? You know, what comes before the or? Now there's a big question for you.
That's hilarious.
So it turned out that the government program that I was working at fell through because the guy who was supposed to be paying the vendors with the money we were getting from the federal government was paying himself.
Oh wow!
And suddenly he had to pick up and run Venezuela, and my Parnassa, the program disassembled like immediately, and I found myself back at my parents' house trying to figure out what's the next big thing in life, and I'm putting on tefillin in late in the morning and writing in my journal and trying to figure out what the next move was going to be. And suddenly a knock comes at the door. My parents' house in Westchester County, where we live on Fairway Drive. There's a golf course across the street. There's no, through traffic over there. And I said, "Can we talk to you?" I said, "Oh no, it's the feds. They're coming to talk to me too. I didn't have anything to do with the money. I was in the educational side." And they said, "We want to talk to you about reading the Bible." I'm there with my tefillin on my head, my black boxes. And I sort of like opened the door, and I said, I know these guys, they were talking about reading the Bible, but I'm standing behind the door like I'm wearing a towel or something like that. And they said, let's talk. I said, okay, you want to talk? So I throw open the door, and there's this black kid and the white kid with a titi, smile, like the Kashi cereal cover, posing for a picture, like their little thin black ties and their black books tucked under their arm. And when they saw me with the black boxes on top of my head, so suddenly their smiles collapsed. They looked at each other without a word, a classic double take, and they started to run as if their tails were on fire. It was like the Wizard of Oz, the cowardly lion jumping out the window. And they ran up. They run like they were like I was chasing them. And I stood up on the front stoop and I watched them go up and around the corner. And when they disappeared out of sight, I said, "Why don't I go to Ohr Somayach?"
They just, we're all calling out Art Gishim Hashem.
Yeah. Tefillin Shebe Rosh. I must have been wearing it, in my head, not just on my head, but it really, it was, it was stunning.
They ran.
It was. I never forget that for the rest of my life. Like, wow, what did I did? There was a, maybe I'm starting to look like a, like a Tzelem Elokim or something like that. Maybe,
And over there you decided
So I went up. I called up. I found out where Ohr Somayach was finally.
Monsey, right?
Monsey, and there was a Wednesday. I put on a 3-piece suit like I was going on like a major job interview. I didn't get dressed since my bar mitzvah, and I went up. I was 24 years old. I went up and I saw guys wearing jeans and sneakers, and they were swinging their thumbs, and they were learning the squiggly lines. I said, "Hey, cool. That's what I'm looking for. They're doing it. They're learning. I don't know about it." They were arguing about the squiggly lines. These guys, they're just like me, and they learn the squiggly lines. So I talked to Rosh Yeshiva, and he said, "Why don't you come back?" Rabbi Rakowski. He said, "Why don't you come back for Shabbos?" I said, "Come back for Shabbat. You're fine." So I put on my jeans and my sneakers. And I came back for Shabbat, and I saw everybody getting into their suits. So I walked around the whole Shabbos in overalls and sneakers, thinking like that was the uniform up there.
That is hilarious.
And nobody said anything. Nobody judged, and they were cool. And I came back the next week with my jeans and my sneakers for the weekday and my suit for Shabbos. And I ended up staying in yeshiva for the next 5 years.
Wow.
Everybody thought I'm out of my mind. I'm going crazy.
How's your family? I'm saying with regards. I know many people that become frum. They have issues with family and the parents or their siblings or their cousins.
There's some siblings and some people around who whispered up until we started to make weddings.
Wow.
They were saying, the poor guy, he could have been a senator, this guy. He had talent, he could have become somebody. He was, he really, we lost a good one to, whatever. But then when they see what the family looks like, they see the children, the grandchildren, they're seeing like a giant wedding cake.
Let's not jump the gun to the wedding and the kids.
Yeah.
So the Rebbe was 24 when he went to Ohr Somayach, was there for 5 years.
Yeah. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. The rabbi's kids know 10,000 times more than you. You feel like you feel like
But you worked yourself.
Yeah. I would go to people's house for Shabbos, and I would see the families on Shabbos. I'd come home at night, and I said, I don't care what it takes. If I have to eat glass, if I have to learn Aramaic, I want that for myself. That was Matan Torah, to see a family together on Shabbos. That's what I want for myself.
Is that where the Rebbe met his Bashert in Monsey, I'm guessing?
There was somebody over there who introduced me at one point, and that's
the rest was history.
It's an ongoing history. It's history, Baruch Hashem, but it's a living history.
So the Rebbe was dorming in Ohr Somayach?
Yeah, dormed at Ohr Somayach, yeah.
And then the Rebbe met his Bashert through somebody?
It was a friend who had a friend. It was like who knew a rabbi, it was a double blind. I met a fellow that we were learning with, that we were trying to be Makarov a little bit, who grew up in Pelham Parkway, and he had a rabbi in Pelham Parkway who happened to know a girl, So he called up this rabbi and said, I got this fellow, he's a Baal Tshuva. And this rabbi said, I've got a girl that nobody's good enough for her. And he says, well, this guy's a nobody. So, Baruch Hashem. So.
What was the Rebbitzins' maiden name?
Frischman.
Yeah. And the wedding was in Monsey, I'm guessing?
It was in Brooklyn, but nobody was from Brooklyn, so that's
no one was from Brooklyn.
My mother-in-law liked the the wedding hall. So,
Sure.
and whatever my mother-in-law wanted for the wedding hall, there was Holocaust survivors. My wife is from I'm from an all-American family, and my wife is from a family that she lost everybody in the European Holocaust, and my whole family was wiped out in America.
Oh,
We have my great-grandfather, my grandfather was one of 10 children.
10 children. And the
5
Rebbe-
boys and 5 girls. 3 or 4 were born in Europe. 6 or 7, I forget the exact number, were born here in the United States. And it's hard to find one Jew from amongst all of
But
them.
weren't one of your cousins the one that whispered in your ears, Ohr Somayach?
That was from another side of the family. So he's a remnant from my my great grandfather's side, from another part of that family. Right?
Wow. So the Rebbe was the only one from the whole family that...
The only one. And my wife is from also soul survivors from her family. So they lost 6 million. So we always felt that.
And Baruch Hashem, the rabbi is rebuilding it with what I understand. There's 10.
Yeah, 5. Just like my grandfather's family.
5 boys, 5 girls.
5 boys and 5 girls.
Wow, that's amazing.
6 grandchildren now, 3 married, Baruch Hashem, and miles to go before we sleep. When we go up to the bungalow to visit my mother-in-law in the summer, many years ago, yesterday was her yurt site, so she's been gone for a couple of years. So we used to go to the bungalow, and they used to bother my mother-in-law after we leave, like, how many are they having already? How many are they having already? How many are you having already? That's how so one year she asked us not to come up, and we didn't come up for the summer because she was going to hear for the rest of the summer, how many are they having already? How many are they having? We had twins, we had this, So one summer my wife says, we're coming up, Ma. And she goes, no, don't come. She knew that was the reason. So we decided we're going to come up anyway. My mother says, okay, put on the red bindle, put the red thread on around the even if it's not from Kevin Rachel. So we came up and we got out of the car, of the van, and all the kids are piling through, and they see like this giant parade of kids coming through. And this was the big event, besides the poker game, on Wednesday night. This was the big event for the whole summer. You see all these people who had survived the Holocaust with knee socks and sandalim, bare-chested, with sticks, and the ladies with the house coats. These little European survivors that most of them gave a posthumous gift to Hitler, Yimach Shemo, afterwards by not having families and not continuing, or having children that felt so bitter about it that they ended up not carrying on at all. And I stopped the parade in the middle, and I said, kids, stop here. And they stopped, and I said, people ask us, I said out loud in front of everybody, how many are you going to have already? How many are you going to have already? They bother us all the time. And I said, you know what I tell them? I tell them we'll stop when we get to 6 million. And they said, that's right, darling, that's right, that's right. Everybody wants to build a museum about the past, and they want to, but to build a museum for the future, that's what it's all about. So amazing. I told my wife, I said, we're not going to do it by ourselves. We're going to need help.
6 million,
but
we need a few wives for that.
But everybody's got to do their part. Right, we're trying to do it. We're trying to do a part, and we feel that that's our responsibility, and that's our.
I know
our goal.
that time is running out. I know that we discussed a lot about the past. Very inspirational, by the way. I personally am inspired, and I'm pretty sure all of our viewers and everyone that's going to be watching this.
I'm inspired too. Just to review it myself.
Yeah,
It
it's
doesn't get
inspiring.
tired. I don't get tired myself.
It's an inspiring story. Can you just give us a little bit of a breakdown of what the rabbi is doing nowadays? Like I mentioned in the beginning, the rabbi is the principal over here of a local yeshiva. A little bit about that, and a little bit about the writing and about the lecturing.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. I try to keep up every Thursday night writing. I feel it's a schus rabim.
Yeah. We get the emails. We publish it also.
And I said I push the button. I go to sleep after that. I'm not saying to go to sleep, but I don't know what happens afterwards. But
right.
But I have in mind that there's, Madison Square Garden is filled with 15,000 people, and people are waiting to hear something. And
15,000 subscribers.
And I meet people all the time. They tell me they read it. You're at my Shabbos table. If it gets a way to expand, whatever it is I'm saying, it forces me to think. The first year I was writing it, I ran out of ideas the first year, and I said, that's it. It's a 1 year and I'm out, one cycle through. But it forces me to continue to look and to be, try to be mechadish.
If I'm not mistaken, there's many years already, right?
So it's about 17 years now.
Wow.
Try to do it like 50 weeks in the year, that way, and keep it pumping out. So it also gives me little 3-minute, 4-minute ideas that in case I have to ever asked in a moment's notice, let's go into the parsha. Let's, Sheva Bracha. I try to be. It helped me to be ready.
That's the most powerful.
And you never know where you're going in life. Our Rebbe told, "Lech lecha me'artzecha el artz asher ereka." We don't know where we're going, and I had no plan. I had no idea. I wasn't applying for a job, but I ended up swerving into Rabbi Yair and seminars and programs that were involved. Arachim and Hashivenu and other things.
Ohr Somayach also.
I worked for Ohr Somayach International. I was learning with business people for many years, and then I started teaching adults and getting involved with Arachim. I taught seminars in California and in New York, and then we started making our own stuff with Donnie Kreisel, who was very influential in the community over here also.
From where, in Queens?
In Queens. We used to make with Rabbi Chaimel, we used to make seminars and Baruch Hashem. So and anyway, so I didn't plan. I started out as a Hebrew school Rebbe out of yeshiva, and I used to teach English, as a second language in the local yeshivas in Monsey. And I always enjoyed it. I always enjoyed interacting with kids. I got involved with adult education, and for some reason I swerved back into this, business. And now Rosh Ruah v'Shulchano, I'm immersed. Yep. Occasionally we have something to do outside, to speak Chazaq or something, but it's not that. Do it more as an avocation, as a speaking. The truth is, it's liberating not to have to, that to rely that, this is who's hiring you. I can speak my heart. I can be myself, even in a certain way. I can be even more Chazaq. I can be more myself, knowing that, so if they don't invite me back, so what?
That is hilarious. Rabbi Label Lam, as we all heard, unbelievable story, history behind him, a man of greatness, to such a young age, to think about coming from the background that you came from, and to bring yourself to where you are today is truly, truly inspiring. It's a role model for all of us to follow in your ways, and B'ezrat Hashem, we should all be zocheh, be able to merit, to be mizakeh to Rabbim, to inspire the public. Rabbi Label Lam, thank you very much for joining us. You could watch this online on chazaqradio.com, chazaqradio.com. I'm sorry, you could listen to this online on chazaqradio.com. You'll watch it online as well at various different websites. And Rabbi Lam, unbelievable.
Thank you, Yaniv, for all you do. You and your brother.
God bless you guys.